Seeing Beyond. I'm Bonnie Colleen, your host, and today we're going to be talking about integrity, which I think is going to have a larger definition than perhaps we have looked at in the past. Our guest is Davida Bache. She's an internationally renowned professional speaker and balance specialist. Davida Bache specializes in personal and corporate ethics and integrity restoration. Her clients cover all parts of the globe and include celebrities, athletes, politicians, high-level corporate professionals, students, housewives, and leaders of every realm who have a desire to operate at peak performance. In her work, Davida focuses on identifying and addressing the psychological, practical, and personal obstacles that prevent people from performing at their very best. She began her practice in California in the early 1980s, then moved to Korea in 1997, and she's returned back to the San Francisco Bay Area and here to be with us on the radio program called Seeing Beyond. Davida, I'm glad you said yes. I'm glad you're here. Welcome to Seeing Beyond for the first time.
Hi, Bonnie. I'm thrilled to be here.
And you are good friends with Dr. Casey Crisp, who, of course, is a frequent guest on Seeing Beyond and one of our very favorites. Talk about a guy with lots of surprises up his sleeve, tons of energy, a real pioneer on the planet, Gary Douglas.
Absolutely. It's a funny story, but I also was doing my practice in Santa Barbara for many years, and I'd never heard of Gary. And then I went over to South Korea to work for a while and ran into a Canadian woman who turned me on to Gary and Access, and the rest is kind of history. Amazing guy.
I love the fact that he was practically over the fence from you in Santa Barbara, but you had to move all the way to Korea to get to know him. That is just a hoot. Well, I told our listeners that we would be talking about integrity today, and that probably it's going to cover a lot more territory than they've ever thought of in the past. You, Davida, talk about restoring integrity. What do you mean by that?
Well, the root of integrity doesn't mean telling the truth and showing up to work on time, although those things, are definitely factors. The root of integrity is whole and complete. So an example of that was the space shuttle many years ago, the one that blew up. It was missing some of its heat tiles, so it didn't represent true integrity. It was not whole and complete, and therefore there was a breakdown. It's very similar in our lives.
Well, and here we just had this huge explosion in San Bruno. They don't have all of the conclusions in yet, but it does look like there was definitely a lack of integrity in the pipeline. So if we're going to infer from those two disasters and put those onto our own personal lives, could we then infer, Davida, that when we as people don't have integrity, we're subject to explosions?
Absolutely. And the explosions, Bonnie, can show up in failed relationships. It can show up in failed health. It can show up in a lack of money, a lack of joy, a lack of that sense of wonderment that children have. Absolutely.
When I was writing about you to put it up on the website, and Seeing Beyond listeners, you always know ahead of time who's going to be on the show just by simply going to seeingbeyond.com and then go to the calendar and look at today's date or look at the whole week ahead. And what I wrote about you, Davida, is that you say we can connect with our true selves and hook up to our natural GPS that our animal friends naturally possess. GPS, of course, is a way that we know where we are on the planet. Talk more about that and then how that relates to the integrity that we've discussed.
Well, it's a great question, Bonnie. Thank you. And it's not about figuring out where we are. It's about connecting to that innate sense of knowing who we are. Nike came out with this great ad, and it used to just drive me crazy. They'd say, just do it. And it's like, do what? So that natural GPS, let me talk for just a moment about animals, all right? I'm not saying we're animals, but let's just go back to that because I traveled extensively throughout Africa. A tiger knows it's a tiger. It operates as a tiger. It knows what to eat, where to live, who to mate with. Everything about it operates on that internal sense of knowing. So so for people, that's the one thing, I have to tell you, Bonnie, this is nothing new. We have ancient philosophers that said, know thyself. Shakespeare, to thine own self be true. So this is really nothing new. What's kind of dropped out for us, there are many cultures in the world, funny, that they're removed from modern-day society that operate like that. The Aborigine and many tribes throughout the world, they have that knowing. So they operate out of that, not from their head of what they don't look at other, like a tiger doesn't look at another tiger and go, gee, I think I'm going to be like him. They operate out of that automatic sense of knowing.
Well, and Gary Douglas on the program talks about I think it was the elephants who, in the huge tsunami that we had in Thailand and other places some years ago, got to high ground before anybody else knew that a tsunami was coming. They sensed it. And Gary was saying, if we had this kind of sense that these animals have, we would have been able to get out of the way, too. We would know when an earthquake's coming. We would know when that truck is going to go into our lane. We would know that this isn't the person for us because they're going to cheat, whatever it happens to be. This internal GPS. Now, he didn't call it a GPS system, but I love that idea. And what makes a GPS system work, of course, is having the satellite way up there. And I think we could extrapolate that for us, that could be like the divine, our guides, our angels, whatever you want to say, but that there is something that is helping us to know if we'll just awaken to it, open up to it.
It's called awareness, Bonnie. And a side story on the tsunami, there was a couple that are very, very involved in access. I'm not saying access is the only road to awareness. I just found it to be very fast, very quick, and very efficient. There was a couple that was in Thailand, and they were going to fly that morning before the tsunami hit. They were going to fly to Phuket, and just like the elephants, they were connected. They were tuned in, and there was that awareness of, you know what, let's go to the mountains and do this instead. So it's that knowing that people don't know that they were born with this equipment. They don't know that. They think that there's something wrong or that they have to copy everyone else, and we're born with that. And through this amazing journey in my own life, I discovered the way to reconnect that. So it's that. It's going in and reconnecting to thine own self be true. What does true mean? True for you. There's so many people that talk about this is the truth, and I had a hard time. I'm kind of an unusual person. At 8, 9, 10 years old, I started going to different churches, and my parents were not churchgoers at all, but I just wanted to find out the truth. And so many of the churches I went to, here I am like a 9-year-old little kid sitting in the church with a preacher talking, and it didn't ring true to me. It was just like they were saying this is the truth, but it didn't resonate. So being what's true for you is very different from what truth is.
And we live in a society that doesn't really applaud that much, in my opinion. I mean, we talk about the rugged individualist and all that kind of thing, but really and truly there's some saying, and I can't exactly quote it, from Japan, that, the nail that sticks up gets hammered back down again.
Right,
and I think that, our society wants us to sit up straight and be good. Raise our hand when we have the right answer, and it has to be the answer that the teacher has that's in the answer sheet at the back of the book or whatever. So this individualist thinking, which is, in my opinion, needed now, because we've got to be our most creative selves. I mean, what was working isn't working anymore. That's becoming more and more evident.
Right.
How do you, Davida, help people to get from the kid who sat in the front of the classroom to get straight A's and raised his hand or her hand as often as she could with the right answer? How do you get them to start thinking for themselves, to follow their own gut, their own intuition, their own what you call internal GPS system?
Now, you said a couple of really key words, which were fabulous. The first one you said is society, all right? So this is really crazy. You know that the definition of domestication is removing something out of its natural state in order to adapt and accommodate the whole, thus society. So you look at dogs, wild dogs. Originally, they came into the environment of humans as companions and protectors and kind of, watching over. Well, when you remove something from its natural state, you also remove that ability to function in a wild, aware state as well. So it's almost like we've been removed from that natural state of being into doing, and everybody has to copy everybody else in order to fit into that society. So does that make sense?
Oh, it absolutely does. And how do you help your clients, because you've got a great special offering for Seeing Beyond listeners, how do you help your clients to become undomesticated?
Okay, so the path for me, I talk a lot about the it factor. And, when I know Oprah Winfrey right now is looking to replace someone in her show, and she's got this show going on right now where she's looking for the next Oprah Winfrey, right? Mm-hmm. And she said she's looking for the it factor. And the it factor she was talking about is when someone walks into a room, just their very presence draws everyone in the room's attention to them. They walk the walk. They live out of that authentic sense of self. There's no pretense. There's no trying to impress. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I guess we could call it charisma, but goes beyond even that.
Yeah, it really goes beyond. It's about being, the way that someone is being, which caused me to go to 10 different churches at 10 and not finding that it factor. Okay, so I stumbled upon this literally, Bonnie, back in the 1980s. I started as a personal trainer, and I was getting people physically fit, but it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough. So I had a woman, a 42-year-old housewife, come to me, and she said, look at Davida, I'd love to be in a marathon, and I don't have any fitness background. Is this possible? She's married, happily married, blah, blah, blah. So I go, absolutely. So for the first 3 months, we just worked on restoring her physical integrity, which is one of the entry points of getting this balance, which connects you to your GPS. After 90 days, seems like that's kind of a magic number, all of her physical world was great, and then boom, all this emotional baggage, all of this stuff from her past that she kept dragging with her started popping up. So because of my background in psychology and my background in recovery, and I have years in all of that training, we started pulling out one thing at a time, getting these things resolved and disappeared in her emotional life. Another 90 days, Bonnie. So now we've got the physical restored. Then we had the emotional gone, the baggage gone, kind of like an air balloon going up in the sky with all this junk in the basket. You start throwing that junk out, what happens? It goes higher, it goes faster, it's lighter, you can see more. It's just the energy just explodes. So then we got that done after another 90 days, and then this creativity just sparked in her life. And all of a sudden, she had possibility, and I want to do this, and I want to do that, and I want to do this. Well, and that was another 90 days of what would you like to do? It's kind of like, Bonnie, going into a store and buying a dress on a rack versus going to Ralph Lauren and saying, design me a dress that's the color for me, the style for me, that when I put it on, my body just goes yahoo.
Welcome back. I'm Bonnie Colleen here talking with Davida Bache. Davida's broad approach is not that of a conventional counselor, marriage therapist, or balance coach. Rather, she proposes to focus on her clients as individuals and get their lives in balance. Davida begins with an in-depth audit of the personal needs and goals in various areas: spiritual, physical, emotional, social, and financial. She then begins developing strategies for her clients to reach fulfillment in all these areas. And if you mentioned that you heard her on Seeing Beyond, for a very limited time, she will offer you a 50% discount on her coaching sessions. Her number, 916-308-3200, 916-308-3200. What's your one thought that you wanted to bring up before we had to take that break?
Okay, Bonnie. There are so many people right now. I was actually appalled when I came back from Asia and realized the economic situation facing Americans.
Yeah, well, you didn't have to be away to be appalled, I'll tell you.
Oh, my God. It was shocking to me. And I'm going to talk very briefly about energy. So, when you normally hit a crisis, you get laid off, and God knows there's so many people that are facing that. You lose your home, like in San Bruno, and everything you've ever had, which, by the way, I've had happen to me twice in my lifetime. There's this contraction of energy where you go into, oh, my God, I'm in trouble, all right? That's a natural reaction for people. On the other side of that, energy is what attracts everything. So let me give you an example. Someone has just been laid off. They've got a family. Their house may be in foreclosure, and they're obviously all that energy is completely contracted in, oh, my God, there's danger here, right? Mm-hmm. Energetically, there's nothing going out there. So what it requires is, so when someone comes to me and tells me this catastrophe or their house has just burned down, what do we do? In order to attract something, it's vital that restoration of energy occur. And people go, okay, well, how do I do that? This sounds crazy to a lot of people, Bonnie, but the point of entrance that you're going to want to shift that energy right then is, okay, just stop a minute. Look at what's going on. How's your health? How's your weight? How's your body? Is there any area in your life that you can take over and bring into a restorative place of integrity that's going to start generating energy, that energy of attraction, and then the job comes, and then you get the creative sense and flow again of what to do. Does that make sense?
It does make sense, and I'm telling you, Davida, I think it is so much easier to do that if we have a personal coach like yourself, somebody who can help us to see beyond, somebody who can help us to see who we truly are when we have lost track of that, lost track of our personal GPS, and even our self-confidence. So, yes, I think it is so important, and that's why I'm so glad that you've decided to move here from Korea and to work with Seeing Beyond listeners, because I know that there are a lot of you out there right now who are realizing that you need to do something different, and especially if you want to make a difference. Now, Davida, the one thing I can say for certainty is that the one thing we can count on is change, and yet it's the one thing that so many people keep on resisting. Why are people so afraid of change?
People would rather die than change. And it's losing all the reference points of what has defined who you are. In other words, it's like if I end my 30-year marriage, if that was my identity as a wife or a husband, who am I? If I lose my job, who am I? If I lose my house, who am I? And the odd thing about it is, if you're willing to step into change, you need to be willing to lose everything in your life. That doesn't work. That's the piece here. If you're willing to let go of everything really that doesn't work, you're just kind of following a script, Then you step into the unknown. You don't have a reference point. But I don't know that a baby bird, when it jumps out of a nest, really knows that it's going to fly, right?
Yeah.
I mean, their reference point is the nest and all the poop in the nest and the mother bird shoving dead worms down your throat, right?
Which sounds wonderful, I guess, to a baby bird.
Well, they think it sounds wonderful, and then the mother bumps them out, and it's like, oh, my God, what opens up?
You mean,
they can fly.
These are for?
They can eat live animals. They don't have to get food shoved down their throat. Do I have time to give you a little short story?
You know, we've got 2 minutes for a short story.
In Santa Barbara, there's a koi farm, and they raise baby koi that go up to about $50,000. They start in these little baby 2 by 10 tanks with fresh water in and the old water out. They move them regularly. They're changing their environment regularly. They're changing inflow and outflow regularly to promote optimum growth. By the time that they're like 20 pounds and 4 feet long, they've gone through about 15 different changes. That's what occurs. And the one thing that I want to say is I'm not the only one that can do this out there, but please, if you're looking for someone to do this, you've got to look for the it factor. You've got to look for someone who's walking the walk, not book trained, who is following an agenda. You've got to have someone who's so aware they can tap into what you require, not based on what everyone should do, or it's just not going to work.
Davida, I absolutely love that, and I think it's so timely that you're here. I'm just sad that we only had a half an hour. We need to get you back on the program when we can take an hour and even open phone lines and have Seeing Beyond listeners call you.
I would love to invite you to call me. Now, here's what you want to look for. If you just can't get me out of your head for the next 3 days or 3 weeks or whatever.
3 minutes.
Yeah, or 3 minutes. If I keep coming back to you, that's not in your head. That's your awareness. You want to follow that. I'm more than happy to have a brief conversation with you. And let me just say that it does occur as being scary to maybe change your whole world. But don't forget that fear and excitement are the same physiological responses. Faster breathing, eyes dilated, temperature rising. So maybe you're not scared at all. Maybe you're just totally excited. I'm here. I'm available. I also do public speaking engagements and motivate crowds of up to 4,000 people. Call me.
We'll get you back on the program again really soon. Thanks so much for having been here, Davida.
Thank you, Bonnie. It was fun.